It was the first time a girl had ever stood on the street. She stood stiffly in the doorway. A kind colleague helped her to raise her hand and pin up her skirt, and finally took her hand. Soon enough, a client took a liking to her. At night, the nanny came with a generous tip. He took his first paycheck and lit it on fire. The nanny looked on in horror. He cremated the man he once was. The innocent girl was gone. The fire will start. The legendary life of Mumbai's gangster queen, Ganguly. Gangu was originally a rich girl, but because of her love affair, she was tricked by a scumbag. She eloped on a train to Mumbai. She followed her boyfriend to a small building. He said he'd go get someone, but when Gangu went upstairs to look for him, all that awaited him was the locked door. Gangu's Love and Life. Gangu's Love and Life was sold by his boyfriend for 1,000 rupees. He sold it cheaply to this nanny, Silas. Silas was not surprised to see Gangu on a hunger strike. Most of the women here are like that. They're trafficked for money or to pay off debts to their families. If they don't, they're beaten and locked up for a while. Even if the girl is still innocent, when she returns home, her family will put her to death for her reputation. This is a woman's hell. Gangu understood. So on the 6th day, he stopped resisting. He put on makeup with the other sisters and welcomed the guests. The innocent rich girl no longer existed. Gangu is the name by which he was reborn. Gangu was reborn. Gangu was reborn. Soon he had a new look for his clothes. He even gave away gold earrings. These were gifts from admirers. Gangu had built up his capital for his own rebirth. At that moment, Sheila came over and urged the girls to take their orders. Gangu got up and announced they were off for the night. He said that business has its share of losses. So Sheila could only watch. One by one, the girls left with Gangu. It was a blatant provocation to him. Hira's revenge came quickly. In the wee hours of the morning, the mate reported that a strange customer had come to see Gangu by name. And he's willing to pay twice as much. Hira's expression was subtle. He knew what such a customer wanted. Gangu was woken up and taken to his room. He watched the man pull out a bunch of notes and a gun. Something didn't feel right. Gangu started to scream for help, but the only other man had already been sent away by Hira. The cries for help soon turned into screams. Everyone was alerted. Hira pretends to be anxious and bangs on the door, but refused to help in any substantial way. The atrocities inside the house were allowed to take place. The next day, Gangu was hospitalized with serious injuries. He had no skin on his body. His arms and legs were broken. The sisters fought for Gangu, but all they got in return was Sheila's words. Gangu understood that Sheila had done it on purpose, but that didn't stop Gangu. He realized more and more that he needed to be respected. He realized that to get respect, he needed to be stronger. From his sisters, Gangu learned that the man who did this was a gangster. Gangu learned from his sisters that the man who did this was a gangster, so that he wouldn't have to suffer like this again. Before his injuries could heal, Gangu was suspected of being alone. He went to the gangster known as the King of Bombay. A woman rips her clothes off in public, but not to show off her exquisite figure, but to show the man in front of her the horrible scars all over her body. And the perpetrator is one of the gangster's men. The woman heard that the boss is a man of integrity. He always helps the poor, so she came to bet on her luck.
मैं गंगू बदनाम गली से हूँ।
तो रहीम भाई अब
गश्तियों का हिसाब ना सही, इंसाफ तो करेंगे।
The boss's expression was instantly serious. He arranged for his men to stand guard in front of the brothel, and told Gangu if the abuser shows up again. He told Gangu that if the abuser showed up again, he should call his men to inform him. The boss was also responsible for the medical expenses, but Gangu refused. He was touched by the tough girl in front of him. He took Gangu as his sister. When Gangu returned, he didn't make a fuss about it. He waited for the right moment, and when he did, the abuser came back. Sheila's ugly face. Gangu's only reply was a flippant one. Finally, she asked her little sister to go to the hospital. Finally, she asked her little sister to call the gangster. She told her sister to tell her men to contact the gangster, and she got dressed up and walked into the room again. The man looked at the restored Gangu. He couldn't wait to throw his fists, Before Sheila could cover her screams with music, boss's convoy has arrived at the brothel. The boss sends his men to break down the door and drag the abuser out, and give them a public beating, until blood stains the front of the car. The boss left without a word, leaving the abuser in the hands of Gangu. Gangu stepped on the abuser.
पैसे दे मेरे हक के पैसे दे
Sheila realized that the girl was no longer under her control. Soon after, the greedy Sheila died of an illness. Gangu took over the brothel. The sisters found Gangu and presented her with a solemn white grain of sand. It wasn't just a status symbol, it was a sign that she had taken on a greater responsibility. She became the respected madam of the neighborhood. Ganguber, the lady of the neighborhood. Gangu started traveling in luxury cars, the nannies in the brothels. He was called in to discipline disobedient girls, but Gangu didn't use violence. But instead of violence, Gangu would tell his story. He gave the girls another chance to choose.
ये खाओगी तो यहाँ की हो जाओ और अगर ये खाया तो जहाँ से जाओगी.
Often, the girl still chooses the latter. Gangu, without persuasion, ransomed her and took her away. And when he got home safely, the mate said he was wasting his money. Gangu smiled a little and said the mate didn't understand. She wasn't trying to be charitable. She was trying to win people over. To protect the sisters in the brothel, it's not enough to have money. You need real power. That's why Gangu is running to be the next governor of the district. His rival, Razia, he's been re-elected for 2 years. He's got a lot of power. Even his election campaign looks like a blessing. To beat him, Gangu needed to build up his reputation. He took over the liquor business from the boss. He's giving more money to the girls in the brothels, and called in a publicity stunt to promote himself. Saved an innocent 15-year-old girl. After all these operations, Razia had a crisis on her hands. He sent someone to Gangu's house to force him to meet him. War has been declared between the two candidates. Razia reported Gangu's liquor business. He sent the police to make a big fuss about it. Gangu, on the other hand, used free films, Razia's speech. Both the candidates went back and forth, and neither one of them hurt the other. Until this day, Gangu finally found the perfect opportunity to break his opponent. The cage on the rooftop. There was a sleeping girl locked inside the cage on the rooftop. Gangu recognized it. Gangu recognized her as the daughter of one of his prostitutes. The girl's mother was helpless. This is a red light district. She's 15 years old, and she's a beautiful girl. If she's not taken care of, she'll be targeted by men on the street. She'll end up like her. The mother wants her daughter to marry into a good family, but no family would accept a whore's daughter. Gangu is not convinced. An innocent girl shouldn't be stuck here forever. About the girl's marriage, he thought of a suitable candidate. He's a small-time tailor. He lives in the red light district, but he's simple and kind. He's not like the other men who come here to have fun. Their meeting was a bit of a cliché, but a simple boy falls in love with a charming girl. And Gangu's broken heart is comforted by the presence of a small tailor. But Gangu knew that this relationship would not last. For the sake of their respective futures, Gangu came to the tailor's house with a large dowry. The tailor's family needed money, but when they learnt that the bride was the daughter of a prostitute, they hesitated. Seeing their attitude, Gangu got up and left with the girl. The tailor's mother stopped him at once. For the sake of the dowry, they accepted the marriage. Mission accomplished. Gangu got into his car and left. The tailor came after Gangu and asked him, "Did you sacrifice him for the election?"
एक इलेक्शन नहीं, कमाटीपुरा की औरतों के लिए गंगू 100 अफसान कुर्बान कर सकती है.
The grand wedding was soon to take place. Gangu watched from upstairs as his love ended once again. Soon after, Gangu was elected governor, but it wasn't a triumph. Sitting in this position, Gangu realized the people here had few human rights. Banks refused to open accounts for them. The developers have joined forces with the schools to boycott the prostitutes. Ostensibly, these people are doing this for the sake of civilization in the area. In reality, it's the developers who want. The developers want to get the land at a low price. Gangu is not in a hurry. He took the girls to the school as a matter of priority. The school refused to admit them because they were discriminated against by the red light district. Gangu argued his case. The headmaster had no choice but to agree. This scene caught the interest of a journalist. He went to visit Gangu later. The girls had finished school early. Gangu looked at the reporter and just asked the girls to come over. He asked the journalist to take a picture of them. The release of the photo led to a wide-ranging discussion in the community. The reporter suggested that Gangu go to the city for a seminar to widen the impact of the incident. At the conference, Gangu tore up his prepared speech. He sat on the stage and looked at the audience. He complained about the injustices in the red light district, and now they're being stripped of their homes. Gangu's impassioned speech was supported by the entire audience. He became famous. Even a congressman came to him, hoping that Gangu's influence to get more votes. The counselor promised that if he's elected, he'll introduce him to the Prime Minister, and that's exactly what Gangu needed. Gangu accepted the MP's offer, and the MP didn't break his promise. He did meet the Prime Minister. He got right to the point with the Prime Minister.
वेश्यावृत्ति को कानूनी दर्जा दिया जाए। सजा तो उस बेचने और खरीदने वाले को मिलनी चाहिए, लेकिन मिलती किसको है? उस बेगुनाह लड़की को।
The Prime Minister, of course, wouldn't nod, but Gangu's words moved him. He promised to set up a committee to look into the matter, and he promised that the women of the red light district would not be deprived of their homes. When Gangu returned to the red light district, the entire population came to celebrate his return, both those who loved him and those who hated him. They all thanked Gangu for what he had done. During his lifetime, no woman in this neighborhood has ever been homeless. Gangu made the biggest fight of his time. In his own time, he may not be remembered in the history books, but the local legend of Gangu will always remain.